Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In today's video, we're going to be taking another look at the trailer for the latest installment of the Fantastic Beasts films. While I know many of us were anxiously awaiting a new trailer on the 24th of February, for now, we'll have to make do with more theories built around the one that dropped back in December. So let's get into it. Okay, so today's topic is going to focus on Queenie Goldstein, the beautiful and charismatic younger sister of American Auror, Tina Goldstein, and what exactly her role will be in the Secrets of Dumbledore. As I'm sure most of you can recall, at the end of the last Fantastic Beasts film, The Crimes of Grindelwald, Queenie quite abruptly alters her allegiances within the wizarding world, betraying her loyalty to her friends and sister in favour of supporting the dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald. Now, I say that Queenie switches sides quite abruptly because, in my opinion, it really didn't seem like her interests were all that aligned with Grindelwald and the beliefs of his other followers, or acolytes as they're commonly known. In fact, when she first comes face to face with Grindelwald halfway through the second film, she seems extremely terrified. So how did she go from the somewhat ditzy, albeit incredibly charming, Queenie that we meet in the first film, to the, dare I say, dangerous and empowered woman we see presented in the Secrets of Dumbledore trailer? And what will this new portrayal of Queenie mean for her character arc and overall role in the film? I think to answer these questions, we must first start at the beginning of Queenie's story within the films. When we first met Queenie in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, she's a low-level employee working in the Wand Permit Office for the Magical Congress of the United States of America, otherwise known as MACUSA. And although we discover almost immediately after being introduced to her that Queenie is an incredibly gifted legilimens, born with the innate ability to enter another witch or wizard's mind and interpret their thoughts, she doesn't seem all that confident in her abilities or position as a witch. She seems insistent that Tina, or Teenie, as she affectionately refers to her sister, is the career woman out of the two of them, and that all she does is get coffee or fix the toilets. To me, this suggests that Queenie doesn't put too much emphasis on pursuing higher achievements within a more traditional wizarding career path. Say, that of becoming an Auror or professor, that kind of thing. Perhaps she simply wasn't interested, or maybe she thought putting her magical abilities into a career was a waste of time. Whatever the reason, it's pretty clear that Queenie doesn't put all that much thought into her magic. Another example of this is the way that she reads people, apologizing to Newt Scamander after looking into his mind without his permission. I know, I'm sorry, I can't help it. People are easiest to read when they're hurting, she says. In this instance, it's clear that she doesn't even have to try when practicing legilimency. Rather, it just comes to her. So, in my opinion, it's her lack of interest in magical pursuits that make her so open to her attraction to Jacob Kowalski, the American nomad she meets alongside Newt. In fact, not only does she seem accepting of his presence, she seems utterly fascinated, a real-life nomad in her brownstone. So when the movie ends with her visiting Jacob in his bakery, it's really not all that surprising. Of course, the next film picks up with the two of them wrapped up in a magically induced engagement, courtesy of Queenie. To me, it all seems a bit odd, but I guess the logic behind it makes sense. As the audience, we're left to deduce that between the two movies, Jacob and Queenie became romantically involved. However, not in any formal way, due to the MACUSA laws, which at the time forbade witches and wizards from having any form of relationship with no-mages in the United States. Because of this, it would seem that Jacob refused to officially commit to Queenie for fear of her being arrested for the crime of being with him. So Queenie decided to take matters into her own hands and put an enchantment on Jacob to coerce him into marrying her. Of course, upon catching up with Newt, he's able to see what Queenie's done and breaks the enchantment. This leads to Queenie and Jacob having quite a large argument, which ends with Queenie disapparating to Paris in search of her sister. Unable to find Tina upon her arrival in France, Queenie is approached by an acolyte and then meets Grindelwald. As mentioned previously, this is the interaction in which Queenie seems incredibly frightened of Grindelwald and his followers. But I guess, after hearing what he has to say, which is basically that he's fighting for a wizarding world in which everyone is free to love whomever they choose, which is, of course, total BS, She comes round to the idea that maybe this guy isn't so bad after all. In any case, I really do feel like it happens quite abruptly. Of course, the film ends with her choosing to leave Jacob, Tina and Newt to join Grindelwald, so that she can help create a future in which she can be with Jacob. Honestly, if that doesn't sound misguided, I don't know what does. In any case, now we're left to wonder where her allegiance with this dark wizard will take her. It seems quite obvious why Grindelwald wanted to lure her to his side, for her legitimacy abilities. After all, we see her use this valuable skill at the very end of the Crimes of Grindelwald, as she shares Credence Barebone's feelings with Gellert, saying, "You need to be careful. He's not sure he made the right choice. Be very gentle with him." Now, I find the way she words this to be quite interesting. To me, it suggests that she doesn't have similar feelings. When she tells Grindelwald of Credence's emotions, she doesn't seem to empathize with them at all. She simply presents them matter-of-factly. It would seem that Grindelwald, despite terrifying her earlier in the movie, doesn't need to be careful with Queenie. She seems to feel that she's made the right choice. Which brings us to the Secrets of Dumbledore trailer. Here, we are presented with a very confident, less colourful version of the Queenie we have come to know and love. She's present in just a couple scenes, one of which looks to be a flashback. Queenie and Jacob are embracing in his bakery back in New York. Here, her hair is the rich gold colour it used to be, and she's wearing the same pink outfit that she wore at the end of the first film when she shows up at the bakery. The second scene, though, is the only current depiction we get of Queenie in the trailer. Dressed all in black with slicked back, platinum blonde hair, she carries herself with a certain strength and purpose we haven't seen from Queenie before. Gone is the happy-go-lucky charm that she used to bounce around with. So, what could this mean for Queenie in the Secrets of Dumbledore? Well, I think it's pretty clear that she's gotten a bit lost in her pursuit of being free to love whomever she wants. I would wager that, even though she tells herself that her love of Jacob is why she's fighting alongside Grindelwald, she barely even thinks about him anymore. Instead, she's motivated by the power she's assuming. She's finally found a reason to invest in her magical abilities for a greater purpose. Something more than just being another Makusa employee or an Ilvermorny professor, for the greater good. I think that in this upcoming film, we're going to see a whole new side of Queenie, a powerful woman who, thanks to her talents as a legilimens, has perhaps become one of Grindelwald's most trusted acolytes. I believe we'll see her present for many meetings of importance in the movie, so that she can share the thoughts and desires of those Grindelwald is meeting with. Sadly, I think in her misguided attempt to secure a future in which she thinks she'll have the freedom to love Jacob, she will actually come up against Jacob and the others. I think she'll believe she's doing it for the greater good, and unfortunately, I think this will mean that more tragedy is on the way for our protagonists, Newt, Jacob, and Tina. I'm hopeful that by the end of The Secrets of Dumbledore, Queenie will recognise that she's taken an unwise turn down a dark path, and that she'll return to her old self once more. I don't think we'll get the overly bubbly Queenie that we first met in Fantastic Beasts, but perhaps that's not altogether a bad thing. Hopefully, the Queenie that emerges will be a more confident witch, who values her abilities and her purpose, but with some of her old charm left intact. Well, that's it for today's video. As always, I'd love to know what you think. What do you believe will be Queenie's role in the new movie? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, for the greater good.